So can you tell me what you know about teacher burnout? Like, how would you describe it? When does it happen? And kind of what's the end result of teacher burnout?
Well, I'm going to go first. I think teacher burnout is the amount of expectations that are placed on us and the amount of time given to get those completed. With the type of students that we teach, the unrealistic goals and not necessarily seeing the small gains that these kids are making. I think also all the forms we fill out the same way 87 times. The fact that we're afraid to call off because of the guilt being behind, we get burned out, we get tired. All the pacing and expectations, the paperwork and everything. It's not like it used to be. We spend more time worrying about making sure this is hung up and that is hung up, and you just get burned out.
I mean, on the same lines, I think it's just being stretched so thin that you just don't have time to do anything else. And I think a lot of people forget to take care of themselves because of that. And I think also just lately, there are so many new things coming out, and it's like we only try something for like a year at most, and then they're on to like the next greatest thing. And so we have to learn all these different things and keep up with them while still keeping up with what we were doing before. And it's
rewriting
just
the curriculum multiple times.
Right, and just the curriculum changes, and why aren't you adapting this enough for this kid? But then this other kid is just, there's just a lot, and there's so much to keep track of all the time. But then kind of how you said, like, there's always like extra stuff that we have to do, like extra documents that we're supposed to fill out, or extracurriculars that we are expected to, it's not mandatory, but we're expected to help out with, and you're just pulled in so many different directions.
Like
it just
making sure
becomes
student works on the wall with things
Right.
like that, and that takes time out of, lesson planning or teaching or things like that, like things that every little bit that you add takes away a little bit more.
Right, or even just like the extracurriculars, like I said, like helping, I see it, like helping out with the talent show or other extra stuff at school that, because no one else is going to do it, and then you feel like you have to do it, but then that takes time away from your own family, and it's just...
Like, you guys have to work and take with me.
Yeah,
but if you have a good teacher, if you want to be a good teacher, the biggest thing about it is building relationships, then you commit yourself to your school, but at the same time, you also have a family at home as well, and it really struggles.
Like you,
like our son.
And I think it's hard because it's like it doesn't seem to. I mean, I haven't ever had another profession, but it doesn't seem to exist to this extent in like another career.
No,
either.
I feel like we always have that conversation where it's like, I wish I had a job.
I wish I had a 9
when
to 5.
When I left the office, my job stopped.
And it doesn't. It never stops. And that brings up another point. Like, you bring your work home with you, whether you physically bring home.
I think other professionals like doctors.
I mean,
and lawyers,
right.
But like your bankers and your accountants.
Right, like
other
other 9 to 5s.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of it. Like, you bring your work home with you, whether you physically are bringing home like a stack of papers to grade, or it's just like mentally, you bring home all that baggage from your kids. Because I guess, like the emotional burnout too. Because I know I lay in bed and worry about my kids.
Your computer died.
No, it just turned out.
It just went by. Yeah, not this specific article that I'm like referencing for this conversation, but some of the other research I've done kind of like talked about, while there are jobs that you like go home and that your job's still following you, a lot of those careers have resources at work that are like to help you deal with that,
right?
And to like process that. Whereas I feel like in education, it's just kind of like your problem, you deal with it. If you can't deal with it, it's your fault. It's not the system's
Then you're like
fault.
meant for it.
Yeah.
So
kind of what you guys described sort of is what I wanted you to. From what I got from the article, you guys actually described teacher demoralization. So the article that I read references this book about teacher burnout and demoralization, and how a lot of the times we're told that if you can't hack it, it's because you are burned out and it's your fault. But actually, like, a lot of the things that people describe as to why they walk away from the profession and why they can't just do teaching anymore, or they can't teach at that hard school is because of, like what you said, all the extra work, and that you're literally fighting yourself because you know you should be teaching and doing something one way so that you benefit your students, but also
You get in trouble if you do it that way.
Right. Because that's not how they want
But
it
the
done.
people that rewrite this curriculum and want us to implement it haven't been in the classroom in so many years that they don't see the changes that education has made just in student population wise. I mean, kids aren't the way they were before. Everything changes, and you know, you want to teach it this way for all kids, but yet that's, you know, but that's not
Right, like
how
it's not,
it is.
it can't be cookie cutter for
We
so
can't
many people.
close the gap on achievement if we don't meet the kids where they're at.
So, which is totally what I agree. And a lot of the research and like the conversation in the interview was just about how the question's always, what do we do to keep teachers from walking away from the profession? And society and like the media and everybody outside of education tends to blame it on teacher burnout, but like they're not looking at what's burning out the teachers and why they're actually walking away. Like most of the time teachers are burnt out, they're tired, but they still have a desire to teach.
Right.
Just physically, emotionally, and mentally, it's too much, and you're not getting like the satisfaction, or you don't feel significant because you're not accomplishing.
Or if you're, and then you call off because you're sick, then you feel bad, so you go into work sick, which isn't the best. You're not the best for your kids there anyway. You know, it's just a vicious cycle. People don't realize, oh, you're just a teacher. It's not just a teacher. We're more than just.
Right, you wear like many hats, and I think, well, you said the word accomplishment, and I think it's really hard to feel. I know I struggle with feeling accomplished. Like I struggle with feeling as though I've accomplished anything at work, because I feel like I'm constantly running, trying to figure something out, doing the next thing, trying to make sure that like I'm doing the paperwork I need to do, my kids are doing like what they need to do, the staff I support are getting what they need, you know, the talent show committee I'm on, like they're getting the help that they need, and it's just like I never feel like I get a sense of accomplishment.
Or even during the school day, like I'm self-contained, I teach life skills. I don't get a lunch or a prep because I'm always with my kids, because that's what they need. That's what is making them successful. During my prep, I do their IEP progress monitoring. During lunch, we all eat together, because that's how you build relationships. So I go nonstop. I don't have a plan. I plan before and after school, and I also work another job in the middle of this. I have a child. Like, it's just always going.
So what kind of things do you feel like you would need as like a teacher, or not even, it might not even be specific to you, but like just teachers in general?
I got wiped out.
Okay.
Just teachers in general, like what do you think you would need to kind of help in that, so that you don't feel like you're...
I want administrators to teach one day in our classroom.
I think having administrators that are closer to the ground and having more face time with kids, because they don't.
Well, we have all these assistants to this and that, and we have all these coaches and teachers on leave, special assignment and things like that, but we have all that in our school, and that has not helped us at all. Come in our classroom, do what we do for one day, and then I bet you sit down and you sing a completely different song.
Do you feel like it needs to be like within school individually administration, or like even their bosses and like their admin?
Both.
Like, do you feel like
it goes from top down?
Yeah, I feel
because it always comes back on us, because we're the low man on the totem pole.
Right. So, I mean, I feel like it's kind of both. I think it needs to start like higher up, like admin, but also, I mean, I think, like, I mean, when you talk about like coaches and stuff, it's like what, but.
I mean, I'm special ed, and I'll ask a coach to come in for reading and math, but they're not familiar with my curriculum because it's a special ed curriculum, so they can't help me. And, you know, so it's like, well, I had a supervisor observe my classroom because I wanted her to see it, and at the end of the observation, she was like, you have to be exhausted. And I'm like, I am, and that was only 35 minutes, and you sat the whole time. So imagine what it's like all day long.
Yeah, I feel like I even have that issue. Like when I do reach out for support, there's nobody really to support me within the school. They can give suggestions, but also they don't know what my classroom,
Right.
considering my like
dino bone.
subject area, they don't know how to help me on those.
No, and then, but they expect, they'll be the first to accuse you or give you a hard time and rate
Right.
you for doing something wrong when
But they don't have the
they
answer.
don't know how to give you the answer or teach you the right way.
Right, and you ask, and then they're like, "Oh, I'll get back to you," or like, "Oh, try talking to this part." It's like pushing it off on other things, and then in the end, you just end up blamed if something doesn't go right.
Bottom line is, we know what's best for our kids, and we
I
don't
think
get to
having
do
that trust would be nice,
and we don't get to do that.
because I think the district has so many expectations, and it's like, no, we know what's best. You need to hit this sequence, this scope and sequence, and this calendar, and these due dates and stuff. And it's like, but no, because I mean, I would like that trust to know, like within me, to know, like, no, my kids need more time on this,
And we
so
keep
I should be allowed
and we keep
to
reinventing
stop.
the wheel.
Right.
Instead of honing in on the
Right,
good design.
Right, and
that we
that's
have.
like the new thing. Right, that's what I was talking about before. Like, we just keep coming up with new things, and we're not trying. Like, we're not really focusing with fidelity on one thing or a couple things. It's just like something new every year because we have to be the latest and the greatest. But it's like, but if what we were doing before works, then just leave it alone. Why do you learn another thing?
So I feel like when you all sort of talked about teacher burnout, you kind of talked about more about like the stressors of being a teacher and like ways to fix that. Because I feel like that is some things that lead to teacher burnout. Like I feel like you just become exhausted and you lose your passion because you just like lose even who you are because you're just so tired and like burnt out.
You forget like why you did it, why you're doing it. Yeah.
But like with kind of like what the article was basing on, it was just about how a lot of the times when we get that way, it's our fault. And even when we take care of ourselves, then we're being selfish because we're taking care of ourselves instead of
We get like shamed for it.
yes.
Because it puts a lot of strain on our colleagues because there's not enough subs, so then our colleagues have to take, they split our classes, and then that's not fair to them. So instead of having 25 kids, they're at 35 kids, which brings their frustration out on the staff that called off, and it creates a low morale because the teachers start getting mad at each other because like, oh, I can't call off again. There's no sub, and it's just too much.
Do you feel like kind of like that demoralization comes from just outside of the educational community, or do you feel like you kind of get it within it too? Like, do you feel like there's other staff that add on stuff knowing that you, like, they live the same life as you, they have as much random stuff and hoops to jump through and policies to follow, but do you feel like you get kind of like that negative, I want to say like that negative viewpoint only from like outside? Like I know for instance right now during COVID, teachers are like trying to be like, look, like what you're asking of us is like too much. Like you're not considering us, but you're also not considering the fact that we know what a school looks like and what a day looks like and how our kids are going to function, and like it's not going to be a healthy environment. Do you feel like, so like when I see those articles and all of those arguments in the comments, they're like all these people who usually aren't in education being so negative, saying, well, that if you don't want to do your job, just like quit and all that kind of stuff. But
Stop paying my job.
do you ever feel like you get that from other teachers too?
Yeah.
Or like other people in education, or is it only outside of education?
I think it's both. But
It's
you
both.
were gonna say, oh, I
No,
thought
it's
you.
both. But I mean, I also think teachers too. Like teachers are like, with COVID and everything. I know me. I would love to go back. I would love to go back because I want to teach. I want to be in front of these kids. I want to see their success. Sitting in front of a computer is not my idea of my profession, And so people think, oh, the teachers have it, this and that, but. It's so much harder because now we have to learn a new way to teach again. And will our kids have the equipment? Will the internet work? Will this, it's just, there's so many unknowns that, one more thing we have to worry about.
I mean, I think it's both. I mean, I think there's always those like stipulations from like the outside of education, like, oh, like your job is really easy. If you want to do it, just don't do it. Do something else. But then I also think that it does come from other people in education too, and I think I don't know, your question made me think about just like as a fairly new teacher, and especially like in my first couple of years, I felt a lot of pressure from other teachers to do more and like be better and like prove myself and like take on all this stuff, and why aren't you doing this and do this and do this and do this. So it was like I felt a lot of pressure to like match up, you know, and prove myself, because there is that stigma being a new teacher. Like the veteran teachers are like, oh, like you're just like a
or
new.
You have those administrators that have their certain staff is like administration people, and they don't look at anybody else's. Like, because every teacher in the school brings something to the school in some aspect. So, you know, somebody could, you know, just because they're not in a supervisory or administrative role doesn't mean that they can't be utilized in a way that makes them see that they are. I think when teachers feel like they are part of the school and they're in the way they teach and it does matter, all that burnout is worth it. It all goes away.
Like if your opinion's valued.
Yeah, like if you're good with like TDAs, you know, and you've been really good at it, you know, and people come and watch you, then that's something that the administration needs to have acknowledge and let you showcase that and teach other people, and it makes you feel empowered to the point where the burnout is worth it. Because you're teaching other people, they saw a skill in you that you can lead.
You're getting some kind of, you feel significant, but also you also then get like, you feel competent in your job.
Right.
That was kind of like the main difference that I noticed between the two too, where I was like, burnout is more, I'm just exhausted and I can't meet my needs and I'm just over this career and it's not a match, whereas demoralization was more, I've lost my significance and don't feel like what I'm doing is mattering.
Right.
So
I'm not there yet.
Well, good.
I just get burned out, but I love what I do.
But I would also, going back to what you said as like a newer teacher, I feel like I felt the same way. I remember, I mean, you know me, in my basement room, I'd get sick, like, freaking sick for months, and I was like, now I can't take off. Like, if I take off, it all goes crazy. But I remember being at a PD, and one of the teachers being like, take off if you need to take off. Like, you need to take care of yourself. Nobody at that school, they're just going to replace you with a sub. She's like, you don't matter enough for them to care as to why you're taking off.
Which hits home.
Yes. But also, kind of like what my whole course has been about is just like making sure you are taking the time to take care of yourself and your stressors.
But then we get in trouble if we take off too much.
So it's just, like I can take care of myself, but only a little bit.
Yeah, you can only recharge yourself a little bit.
They give us so many sick days, but after you use so many, you get called in the office, which is frustrating. But then you see other staff members that don't get called in the office for missing 60 some days of school. And that's another thing that causes a lot of like, well, why am I here? Like, why am I getting called in for this when there's something like, there's just so many inconsistencies and just not everybody's valued in the way that they should be.
Right, and even like back to just like taking a sick day, I feel like, and I could be wrong, but I feel like in other professions, not necessarily doctors, but like in a lot of other professions, if I want to take a mental health day, I can do that. Like, you know what, I need to do something for myself today, whether it's just like sleep in, make myself a nice breakfast, read my book.
But I text the school all day, and people that have my kids, like, how are they doing? Like, so even when I'm off, I'm still thinking about my kids, what's going on? Are they working? Do you have any problems? Do you need me? It's when a teacher is their own breed. We're wired differently.
Never like turn. It's like really hard to just turn it off.
We take pride, and a true teacher takes pride in what they do.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get him
and I'm
out.
proud to say I'm a teacher. And I'm proud to say I'm a teacher for Pittsburgh Public too. So.
Well, thank you for interviewing with me. Do you have anything else you'd like to add?
No.
Stay strong.